Well, let's try to do the hard work of looking at a large unit like that, chapter 4, verses 1 through 16. I think we've spent 25 sessions on those 16 verses. You might say looking at the trees in the forest or the clusters of trees, and that's hard enough. It is even more difficult to step back and try to see the forest whole and let all of the trees feed into your interpretation of the big picture. So let's take a session and try to sum up what's the point of verses 1 through 16. And I've broken it down into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units, and I'll try to state the main point of each, and then we'll step back and try to say the main point of the whole. So, verses 1 through 3. Now, these are my attempts to summarize the main point. You test it by what you see. Walk worthily of your calling by maintaining the unity of the Spirit by love. Here's the text. Therefore, I, a prisoner of the Lord, urge you to walk in a manner worthy of your calling and to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace, and do it in love. Verses 4 through 6. Because the reason you should maintain it is because there is an objective ground for this unity in the oneness of God and of the faith. Here's verses 4 through 6. There is one body, one Spirit, one hope belongs to your call, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of us all. So there's objective reality underneath this unity you are to maintain. Now verses 7 to 10. The risen Christ gave gifts to all Christians as the way of maintaining and attaining. We're going to see that in a minute. So there's a maintaining of what is objectively and a seeking to attain unity that isn't experienced yet, even though it exists in principle. The risen Christ gave gifts to all Christians as the way of maintaining and attaining unity by love. So this is the way that comes to pass. So here's verses 7 through 10. Grace was given to each one of us. Every Christian, grace according to the measure. We all have different measures of Christ's gift. And then all of this as grounding for that from the Old Testament. Verse 11 to 12. In a more detailed explanation of this way of unity by love, the way of, namely, everybody having gifts and using them. More detailed explanation of the way of unity by love. He also gave foundational and ongoing leaders to the church. So not just gifts to every Christian, all Christians, but he also now, getting down into the granular explanation of how all Christians are to use their gifts, he says he's given leaders to the church with a focus on teaching to equip all the Christians with their gifts to minister to each other in truth and love. So here's verses 11 and 12. He gave apostles and prophets. I think those are the foundational, according to 2:20, foundational givers of revelation, evangelists who bring about conversions by heralding the gospel, and then to the flocks that are gathered, shepherds or pastors and teachers, and the focus there, especially on their task of teaching, to equip all the saints to do the work of the ministry for the building of the body. So this is a way of describing the details of how the saints go about maintaining and attaining the unity of the Spirit through love. And now we see also through truth. Lots of teaching being focused on. We'll see that again here. Last unit, 13 to 16. The aim of Christ giving gifts is that every member of the body of Christ would, by love and by truth, stop being unstable children, but instead become a unified corporate representation of Christ in the world. Hear those long verses we spent a lot of time on. Until we attain, not just maintain, but attain now, the unity, the experienced unity of the faith and of the knowledge, because teaching is so crucial here, of the Son of God to a mature manhood, the measure, the stature of the fullness of Christ. So corporately, we are to be in the world, a kind of representation of a mature Christ, a whole grown-up Christ, that we now individually may be no longer children tossed to and fro by every wave of doctrine. There's the emphasis on teaching again, by human cunning, by craftiness and deceitful schemes, but rather, instead of being children, rather grow up. That we grow up in every way into Him who is the head. So again, the full manhood, the full stature of Christ, from whom the whole body, joined and held together by every joint with which it is equipped, when each part, there's again mutual ministry, every saint using his gifts to use the truth and in love, work makes the body grow and builds itself up in love. Now, let me try this. What is the main point? That's my effort to state the main point of each unit. Now, what's the main point of the whole? How would I summarize it all, trying to not give short shrift to anything that belongs to the essence of the matter? This is not easy. I recommend you do it. It's mind-breaking. But oh, the value in maintaining good biblical balance in our ministries in the church. So here's my effort to state the main point. Maintain, verse 3, and attain, this is objective maintenance of what is objectively real and attaining of what is not yet experientially real. Maintain and attain, verse 13, unity. Big emphasis on unity in these verses. Unity of the faith, unity of the knowledge of the Son of God. One man, unity of the body. Unity by love. 3 verses, verse 2, verse 15, verse 16. And the way to go about attaining and maintaining that unity by love is by ministering to each other. Verse 12, with the gifts of Christ. Verse 7, which He gives to everybody. Centrally, mainly, essentially, speaking to each other truth about Christ. Not just any old truth, but in the context, all of the teaching and all of the knowledge. Truth about Christ. Verse 15. As you are equipped by Christ-given shepherd teachers. So, big emphasis on unity. Christian unity maintained by love in truth. This is not just unity at the expense of truth. There is no Christian unity except unity in the truth. It is maintained by speaking the truth to each other, and that exercise of love is by ministering to each other that truth in love, equipped in the church by shepherd teachers.